what's up, everyone? We're going to solve this debate or this debacle once and for all. So it's a little after midnight here for me. I was going to wait and do this tomorrow, but we'll just go ahead and get it over with now. B-adjust versus B-adjust on versus B-adjust off versus continuous. What's the difference here? In order to understand that, first you have to understand how futures work. So futures work by every month has a specific letter or code. CL, for example, oil futures, they trade on a monthly basis. So you'll see FGHJK as each month goes on. That letter will change and that rollover will happen once a month. But with indices, those are quarterly. So you get HMUZ. On the left there is your month code. And on the bottom there, that's a picture of just the NQ calendar. So you'll see we only got HMUZ. You can just remember hummus. HMUZ, hummus for Indus futures. Here we got the first trade, last trade, and rollover dates. Rollover dates aren't on here, but rollover dates are when you see last trade date. That's always the third Friday of the month. Now with rollover, rollover is a little objective. Rollover happens when volume shifts. That's an industry standard, is typically the second Friday, so the Friday before the end date. But really it's whenever volume shifts. So whenever you see that 51% of volume on the new contract, that's when you should change your contract to the next month or the next quarter. But industry standard is typically second Friday, with the contract end date being the third Friday. And so how that looks is, again, hummus, we got the HUMZ, and we got our December, January, February, March, all the way to December. So in March, you're going to have the rollover. In June, you're going to have the rollover. In September, you're going to have the rollover. And then in December, you're going to have the rollover. All right. Now with that in mind, there's three different charts. You're going to have the contract month. Those typically, like if you use TradingView, you're going to see NQZ 2023. That's the current contract. That's December contract. That might be NQU, NQH, NQM, and then the year for that specific contract. For continuous, that's going to be like your NQ exclamation point 1 or whatever it is. That's your continuous contracts. There's two different types of continuous contracts. There's back adjusted on and back adjusted off. So let's look at some examples. Here is quarterly versus continuous. Continuous is at the bottom, and that is with B-adjust off, and we'll talk about B-adjust later. But for quarterly versus continuous, up at the top, going left to right, we've got NQM, NQU, NQZ. So we're doing that, by quarterly. We don't have the first quarter there. We're just going to look at the current and the past two. Where I've marked the vertical lines on the quarterly contracts, those top three, that is where the contract starts and ends. That is the only relevant price action on that current contract, and we'll talk about why. So if we look at NQM, top left, we can see that that starts on Monday, 20th of March, which is following the end date of the prior contract, and that runs until Friday, 16 June. On 16 June, that is the third Friday of June, that is the contract end date. Notice that there's no more trading on that contract, and then it switches over to NQU. But when we talk about, okay, when's the rollover? Well, that's just 5 days prior. So you go 5 days back, and that's when volume would have shifted. But now we're at NQU, so that picks up where NQM left off. So we pick up at 20 June. That's the following Tuesday. That might have been a holiday, Monday closed or something. And then we run it until Friday, 15 September, which is the third Friday of September. Come Monday, we're back to the new contract. So U ends and Z starts. And then Z is going to run until the third Friday of December, which is annotated by that vertical line. Now if we look down, we're going to see a continuous chart in Q1 exclamation with B-ADJ off. And this is showing you the exact same thing as above, but with the annotated blocks basically cut and pasted in. So all you're seeing is with the continuous is this gap right here. Let me see if I can get my little laser pointer going. So down here, this gap or this box of price action is this box of price action. This box of price action is this box of price action. This little extra piece right here, that was price action that was on this contract on NQU, but this contract wasn't current yet. At the time, at this time, this was the forward month. This NQU wasn't the lead contract yet. It hasn't been rolled over to yet. So all this price action is really irrelevant because that is happening over here on NQM, which is the current lead contract at that time. So when we look at NQM, that is this price action. And then as we transition and roll over to NQU, it just picks up that following trading day. So when you're looking at quarterly contracts, you only want to keep in mind that relevant price action is the price action between the start and end date. Anything prior to that is irrelevant. You have to go look at the contract prior to that, so the prior quarterly, or just come down to a continuous and you can see them all. And that is each one of these little squares cut and pasted together. That's a continuous contract. It's each one of these little start end date blocks cut and pasted. Now if we go back a few slides, we'll see that the start dates are typically a year out. You can start trading the forward year almost a year out. So this price action prior to June 20th of when NQU went live, in a sense of the previous one ended, this one picked it up. It's still going to have price action all the way a year back. You're still going to see candles going back a year, but all that's irrelevant because this contract is at the time, this contract wasn't the lead contract. So again, what you want to pay attention to is when this contract, or whenever the current contract you're looking at, when it picks up from the last contract. And the easiest way to see that is just to look at a continuous. So again, these blue line boxes are cut and pasted down here to form a continuous contract. Now let's look at a current month versus a prior month. So now we're currently trading NQZ. That's December contract. This is recent price action. This sell side liquidity is at 14,803. But if we look at NQU, which is the previous quarter contract, that swing low was 14,609. All right, it's different there. At the time, this is the real swing low because in between these two boxes was when this NQU contract was the current contract. It had the most volume. That's where all the volume was trading in the market. So all this price action between these two blue lines is relevant. Anything previous to that blue line is irrelevant. So this swing low is the real swing low, 14,609. Now when we come and look on the current month, NQZ, we can see we've taken that sell side, but that's not the real sell side. At the time this sell side was formed, NQZ wasn't the current month. So that swing low is a false swing low. It's not relevant. This is the real swing low. Let's see how that makes sense. So now we're going to look at a continuous back adjusted off versus a current month. All right, on the left here, we've got our continuous contract with B-ADJ off. If you notice, This is a continuous contract. So it's taking each quarter in between those blue boxes or those blue lines, it's cutting and pasting those together to form a continuous contract. Notice where the sell side is, 14,609. If we go back a slide, the NQU, the previous quarter, sell side was 14,609. Notice that on the current month, NQZ, that sell side was 14,803. But when we're looking at a continuous, what is the sell side? 14,609. Because that, in between these two blue lines, that price action is a mirror image of NQU. Over here, now this price action is NQZ. So we've come down and we've taken true sell side. If we look over to the right again, that's NQZ, and we've taken sell side at 14,803, but that's not the real sell side. That's false sell side. Because again, at the time that that SSL was formed, that price action wasn't the high volume price action. It wasn't the lead price action. So hopefully that makes sense. And what the fuck is B-adjust on then? All right, so B-adjust on, all this does is remove the rollover gap. So when that third Friday of the month comes for that quarterly contract end date, the Friday prior to that prior Thursday and Friday, going from the second Thursday to the second Friday, is your rollover. You're going to have a gap there. That's when volume shifts, and you're going to see that price gap form when the market shifts its trading from NQU to NQZ, for example. You're going to get that price gap. So all B-adjust does is it turns that gap from on to off. So just think of it as gap on, gap off. So if you look at these two charts, these are both continuous charts. The left has B-adjust off, the right has B-adjust on. It just removes the gap. What's the purpose of this? This is for code-based systems, for backtesting, right? When you're backtesting code-based systems, you don't want gaps, unnecessary gaps that are not indicative of price movement. If I start coding a system to by moving average crossovers or trends or like MACD or probabilities or whatever, if I'm coding a system and trying to backtest it over years of data, I'm going to have all these little gaps in price, and it's going to start messing with my results. So B-adjust removes those gaps, and now you get clean, fluid price action throughout a historical chart, and you don't have to worry about it negatively impacting your system testing. That is really the only thing you should use B-adjust for, is automated system backtesting. Turn it off. That is not indicative of true price action. You want to see those gaps, because leaving those gaps on is going to be the difference of a high being where it should and a low being where it should. If you notice, look over here, we have B-adjust off, and this buy side, as we move to the right, it's swept. So that buy side swept and then the down move. If we look over here, that same buy side, that red doji candle, there's an SMT here. It's higher over here on B adjusted on, because when we took B adjust and we removed that gap, we shifted everything from this green candle to the right. We shifted down to remove that gap. We brought it right down to the close of that candle. So if you notice, the close and the open are equal. So when you look at a B-adjust contract, it's going to remove the rollover gap, and it's going to make the prior bar close and the next bar open equal. It's just going to totally remove that gap. And what that does is everything after the rollover has now been slid down. And it's just going to make everything messed up and weird looking and not what you want when you're trying to read price action and look for historical liquidity pockets of where buy side and sell side exist. So hopefully all this makes sense. If you have any questions, let me know. Moral of the story is if you're doing any kind of um, long-term higher time frame back testing that extends past the current contract's rollover date, uh, you want to be using continuous charts with B-ADJ off. If you're only looking at price action that is within like the last few weeks and it's within that current contract's takeover date and end date, then that's fine. You don't even need a continuous chart. You can use the NQZ. It's currently, what's the date? It's the 28th. So the rollover happened on the 8th. So anything within the last, 3 weeks, anything within the last two-ish weeks, if you're only looking at that price action, then you can look at an NQZ chart. No problem. But if you're going to look at price action prior to that, where it extends pre-rollover, then you want to look at a continuous chart with B-ADJ off. So if you guys got any questions, just let me know, but hopefully this clears it up for you.